Hello, welcome to the Security Update with me, Hamse Daabjeerin. In this program, we will be covering for you the latest stories that matter security in the African countries from West to Horn of Africa. Ahead on the program, a regional electoral commission shot dead in Lassa, North Somaliland. Somalia and Afar ethnic conflict affected the region as new violence broke out in Djibouti. Ethiopian Airlines declines shipping arms to Tigray region. Sudanese Prime Minister Eritrean officials moved to mediate in Tigray conflict. Civilian is killed in Central African Republic's rebel attack. Welcome to the program. The head of Somaliland's Electoral Commission in Seoul was assassinated by unknown gunman on Saturday night. No group has yet claimed responsibility of the murder, while national parties sent their condolence messages to the nation and family.
waxaan halkan ka yeerinayaa natiijadii 12 xubnood ee golaha wakiilada gobolka kan ku
Abdullahi Labagole, the head of Somaliland's National Electoral Commission in Seoul region, was killed by unidentified assassins in Lasano, the administrative city of the region. Initial reports say he was heading to his residential home when he was killed. Residents said the assailants immediately escaped from the scene before the country's security forces arrived at the site. The government has not yet commented regarding this matter, and no group or individual has yet claimed responsibility for the attack. Somaliland national political parties have condoled the nation for the loss of their loved one. They described him as an honest and key actor for the recently concluded House of Representatives and parliamentary elections in the country. This is not the first time such an attack has happened in Seoul. Several other notable government figures, including judiciary officers, were previously killed in similar attacks for which no group had claimed responsibility. This week, an ethnic conflict between Somalia and Afar of Ethiopia broke out in Garba Isa district. The conflict seems to be spreading in the region as new conflicts are reported in Djibouti, which is neighbor to Ethiopia.
shicibweynaha reer Djibouti oon ka wargelinaya arrimaha halista leh ee maanta ka dhacay magaalada madaxda Djibouti.
A new conflict between the Somalis and Afar has been reported in Djibouti following days of the similar incidents happening in Ethiopia for the past few weeks. Somalis and Afar make up the two largest ethnics in Djibouti. The government of Djibouti has not said about the number of people dead or injured in the conflict, but they described the incident as unacceptable and warned the two warring sides to avoid such conflict. Initial reports say the situation of Djibouti now returned to normalcy. The Djibouti Interior Minister Saeed Nur Hassan is speaking to the state media and underscored if the two sides do not take their words regarding the matter as serious statement, they will take an appropriate action against them. This violence in Djibouti is related to the recent ethnic conflict between Somalis and Afar, which broke out in Ethiopia, in which many people died. Somalis and Afar are one of the main ethnics in the Horn of Africa, and the ethnic conflicts may affect security of the region, as has happened in Djibouti. Wadani Party Organizing Secretary Abdullahi Jama Osman Gilchire said his party was deeply saddened by the tragedy in the city region of the Somali regional state of Ethiopia, where Afar forces killed Somali civilians.
The secretary stated that even though Somaliland's foreign policy is based on not interfering in the internal affairs of neighboring countries, as a patriotic party, foreign policy does not change the fact that they are deeply saddened by the killings of civilians in city.
In ay ka dhacaan wadamada aynu jaarkanahay waxyaabo la dareegeli kara oo ama dabiici ah.
He noted that Somaliland's foreign policy is not to interfere with its neighbors and the affairs of other international governments, and that it was a policy that the Wadani party took seriously. However, certain situations are exempted and are prone to make them feel bad.
Waa arinta ku saabsan Garba Isa iyo dadkii lagu laayay
Garba Isa and the people who were killed, as I said, without interfering in the affairs of the government. And we are very sorry for what happened to our blood relatives and saddened by the death of 200 innocents.
Ethiopia's national carrier Ethiopian Airlines has denied reports that it lifted armies to the conflict-hit region of Tigray.
The airline said that after the airspace was reopened, it only gave commercial essential service by transporting civilians. Flights to and from the Tigray region had been suspended because of the conflict that started in November 2020. The airspace was reopened in December 2020 and then closed again few weeks ago when Tigray rebels started fighting against pro-government forces. Ethiopia Airlines says it has had no flights to the region since the recent closure. The airline says the reports are from people who want to defame and spoil its image. It says photos of uniformed officers disembarking are old and that it had never transported soldiers to combat areas. The war in Tigray began last November when Abiy sent troops to oust the dissident regional leadership, saying it was in response to attacks by TPLF on federal army camps. Abiy promised a swift victory and federal troops took control of Mekele in late November. But intense fighting has persisted throughout the region amid mounting reports of massacres and widespread sexual violence.
President Muhammad Abdullahi Farmajo of the Somalia was on Saturday in attendance of a graduating ceremony for the third batch of officers and the fourth batch of deputy officers from the Somali National Army who graduated from Turkisom military training.
Farmajo noted that the officers who graduated are expected to take a lead in the national plan for the establishment of armed forces and be at the forefront of the work to liberate the country from terrorism.
The federal government of Somalia is committed to rebuilding, equipping and upgrading the national army in order to restore the strength and quality of the Somali armed forces.
He went on to thank the government of Turkey for their assistance in training the officers, noting the relationship between the two countries is based on brotherhood and great cooperation. Several notable figures were in attendance, including Mehmet Yilmaz, Turkey's ambassador to Somalia, Abdel Fattah Qasim Mahmoud, the Deputy Minister of Defense, and Commander of the Somali Police Force, Major General Abdi Hassan Mohammed Hijar.
Governor Babagana Sulum of Porno, northeastern Nigeria, has inaugurated 1,000 volunteer hunters to complement efforts of security agencies on counter-insurgency. But we will be back after the short break. Governor Babagana Sulum of Porno, northeastern Nigeria, has inaugurated 1,000 volunteer hunters to complement efforts of security agencies on counter-insurgency.
We hope to focus on consolidating on the gains of the current year despite some of the challenges we face and open new vistas of hope for improved security, better economic situation, visible and tangible dividends of democracy.
Governor Babagana Zulum of Borno State, northeastern Nigeria, has inaugurated 1,000 volunteer hunters to complement efforts of security agencies on counter-insurgency. The 1,000 volunteer hunters were properly screened by men of the Department of State Security to adequately secure all farmers and farmlands against Boko Haram attacks in Jere, Maiduguri Metropolitan Council, Mafa, and Kanduga local government areas. The governor of the state, Babagana Zulum, said armed forces and other security agencies, including men of the Civilian Joint Task Force, have been doing very well in the fight against the insurgents. He, however, added that it is also important to engage local hunters groups who were more conversant with the terrain in order to speed up and end the lingering crisis. He pledged that his government will not relent in its sustained efforts to ensure that insurgents are decimated and have no breathing space in the state. Professor Zulum then promised to provide immediate support economically to all of the volunteer hunters and their families. The governor then cautioned them not to engage in activities that are contrary to the rules of the land. Borno State has been the epicenter of Boko Haram insurgency since 2009. In spite of the effort of the Nigerian military to contain the insurgents, insecurity caused by the terrorists remain a major hindrance to the development in the state.
Idan suna ganin motocinmu da mutanenmu nan wallahi kowa yana farin cikin aiki idan muka tashi shikenan zamu sa su gaba idan muka je muka bar su a bayan gare mu ma zamu wuce gida su ma za su wuce gidansu kowa yana gode mana kuma a bayan haka an gode Allah an gode gwamnatin Borno.
At least 4 football players were killed and several others wounded when a palm plaster targeted a pass carrying a local soccer team in Somalia's port city of Kismayo on Friday.
4 local footballers in Somalia were killed when an explosion believed to have been caused by a bomb ripped through their bus on Friday, police and witnesses said. 10 players from the Jubaland Chamber of Commerce and Industry Club were heading off for a game at the Kismayo City Stadium in southern Somalia when the blast hit. A police officer, Mohammed Sadiq, accounted that the players were riding in a bus when the explosion went off, presumably inside the vehicle. There are investigations going on, but we presume the device was planted onto the bus. He said 4 footballers were killed and 5 others wounded. An eyewitness said the blast was huge and it caused devastating fire which burned down the bus. People rushed to remove the dead bodies and wounded players. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the blast in Kismayo, the capital of southern state of Jubaland, which borders Kenya. Jubaland was the first state to start voting this week in a long-delayed national elections in Somalia that the Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab group has threatened to disrupt. The group has been fighting to overthrow the federal government since 2007 and frequently attack government, security and civilian targets.
Of the 4 football players were killed in a palm blast which is to be believed planted in the vehicle. Condemnation messages from the federal government and some of the federal member states have been emerging for the past few days. The Prime Minister of Somalia, Mohamed Hussein Roble, strongly criticized yesterday's palm attack which targeted one of the prominent soccer teams in Kismayo, Jubaland, state of Somalia. The Prime Minister condoled with the families and friends who lost their loved ones in the attack. The Jubaland state leader said that Al-Shabaab is committed to frighten civilians, including the youth of the country, and he called the general public to unite against Al-Shabaab. The state leader wished a quick recovery to the victims who are in hospitals for treatment. On Friday, 4 football players were killed after their vehicle was targeted with a palm in Kismayo, the administrative city of Jubaland, state of Somalia. Another number of people also injured in the attack. The football team was planning to go to a stadium in Kismayo where Jubaland leaders were expected to officially open a football tournament. Sudanese Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok received a message from Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki on the armed conflict in Tigray region of Ethiopia, highlighting the need to mediate in the long-running conflicts.
On Thursday evening, Osman Saleh, Eritrean Minister of Foreign Affairs and Presidential Advisor Yemeni Gabrib, delivered a verbal message to Hamdok from Afwerki, according to a statement released by his cabinet. The statement said that the Eritrean leader responded to message on the bloody conflict in Tigray from Hamdok, who is also the chairman of the East African Bloc, IGAD. In a recent message to a number of IGAD and African leaders, the Sudanese premier stressed the need to reach peaceful and political solutions in Ethiopia that ensures the unity of Ethiopia and meets the aspiration of the Ethiopian people, said the statement. He further urged to prioritize addressing humanitarian issues, Following the start of fighting in Tigray last year, Hamdok proposed to mediate between the government and the TPLF, but Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed rejected the offer. In a statement released in Asmara, the Information Ministry stated that the two sides had frank and extensive discussions and agreed on the need for a regional effort to overcome the internal and external challenges. For its part, the Ethiopian Foreign Ministry said that its nationals living in Sudan rejected undue external pressures on the government of Ethiopia and meddling in internal affairs of the country. Speaking to a gathering with Ethiopians in Sudan inside the embassy, Ethiopian ambassador to Khartoum, Yebelta Ameru, called to condemn the TPLF for its atrocious acts.
The Nigerian Defense Headquarters said that over 16 Boko Haram fighters have been killed by its troops, while many others have been arrested in the past 14 days, as the country intensifies its campaign against insecurity.
So also, several terrorists were neutralized within this period.
The Nigeria Defense Headquarters said that over 16 Boko Haram fighters have been killed by its troops, while many others have been arrested in the past 14 days as the country intensifies its campaign against insecurity. Brigadier General Bernard Onyeko, Director of Defense Media Operations, made the disclosure in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, while briefing journalists on the successes of military operations across the country in the last 2 weeks.
Cumulatively, the operation led to the neutralization of about 16 Boko Haram and Islamic West African province terrorists, as well as 29 of them were arrested, while 40 civilians who were kidnapped were rescued. Furthermore, 11 Boko Haram terrorists and their families, comprising of 5 females, adults, and 12 children, were arrested at FOB Mayanti and Darajamel on the 15th of July.
General Onyeko said that the troops also received weapons, made arrests as well as rescues. Onyeko also disclosed that the men of the Nigerian Army also raided camp of the Eastern Network Security, the armed wing of the indigenous people of Biafra.
In a renewed effort by the armed forces of Nigeria to end the menace of indigenous people of Biafra and Eastern Security Network activities in the southeast zone of the country, own troops based on credible intelligence conducted a raid operation on a terrorist camp of the group at Akpaofu community in Kano East local government area of Enugu State. A combined team of security operatives raided the camp and neutralized some of the members and recovered some arms and ammunition in the process.
For the past decade and more, Nigeria has been battling the deadly Boko Haram insurgents that has cost up to 30,000 lives and displaced 2.3 million people in and around the northeast region of the country. The group, which has carried out attacks in many parts of the country, remains very active in the northeast after splintering into groups. Nigeria has since made gains against insecurity after troops neutralized many of the insurgent leaders and bandit commanders.
The United Nations peacekeeping mission has disclosed that 6 civilians were killed and several others wounded by rebels in a village in the northeast of the volatile Central African Republic.
The United Nations peacekeeping mission has disclosed that 6 civilians were killed and several wounded by rebels in a village in the northeast of the volatile Central African Republic. The village where the deadly attack took place is about 550 kilometers from the capital, Bangui. The Central African Republic has been in turmoil since rebels overthrew the government in 2013, displacing over 1.2 million people. The country is the second least developed in the world, according to the United Nations, and is still suffering from the aftermath of a brutal civil conflict that has plagued it.
Pour accomplir la mission qui lui a été confiée par le peuple centrafricain.
President Faustin Archange Touadéra was re-elected in December on a turnout of fewer than 1 in 3 voters. The ballot was hampered by armed groups that, at the time, controlled around 2/3 of the country, and rebels mounted an offensive in the run-up to polling day. Since the last election, the army, backed by the United Nations peacekeepers, Rwandan special forces, and Russian paramilitaries, has been fighting and claimed much of the territories from rebel control. Earlier on Thursday, the United Nations Security Council extended an arms embargo on Central African Republic for 12 months as members voiced alarm at the deteriorating security situation in the country.
And with that, the story of the United Nations peacekeeping mission disclosing that 6 civilians were killed and several wounded by rebels in a village in the northeast of volatile Central African Republic will wrap up our program for this time. Thank you very much for being with us. This is me, Hamse Daabjeerin.